Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our well-rounded, world-ready, strengthening your core by serving the whole student. Please say hello by placing your name and where you're from in the chat box as we get started. Today, we'll be exploring the content areas of fine arts, physical education and health, and world languages, and providing resources on how these content areas better prepare your students with 21st century skills, critical thinking, communication, creativity, and collaboration, as well as supporting their social and emotional learning through self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making, and their career futures. Before we go any further, let us introduce ourselves.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's session. I'm Dr. Elizabeth Mon. I'm the Director of Fine Arts here at the Oklahoma State Department of Education. This is the start of my 4th year here at the agency. I'm originally a music educator, but I serve all 4 areas of dance, drama theater, music, and visual art. You can see my contact information there on the screen, and you can also see my social media information in case you'd like to follow me or reach out at some point. Small note, I am currently on maternity leave for another 2 weeks, but I'll be back in the office in July, so I'll get back to you if you do reach out to me at some point. And also, if you see a baby in the shot at some point during the meeting, I apologize, but she's here with me today, so I might need to give her a little extra attention.
And I'm Shayna Klassen, the Director of Health and PE. I'm completing my 2nd year here at the State Department. Prior to this position, I was a health and physical education teacher for 19 years, teaching pre-K through 8th grade. My contact information is also on the screen, so if you'd like to contact me with any questions or comments, please do so. And you go ahead and follow me on social media as well.
And I'm Dr. Kathleen Skinner. I'm the Director of World Languages. This is about the 2.5-year mark for me at the Oklahoma State Department of Education. I've been a longtime world languages educator in Oklahoma, teaching German and Spanish. And I've been in the rural, suburban, and urban areas of Oklahoma. So I also have been the Director of World Languages Education at Oklahoma State University before I came here. As you can see, here's my contact information, and we'll move on to our group agreements.
Sorry.
No, that's great. So if you look here for just a moment, we'd like you to ask questions and share your ideas. That's the way we move forward with thinking out of the box and learning more ourselves. And also it helps us understand where you're coming from. Make sure you take care of any of your personal needs and delay distractions. We want to make sure we create a safe and inclusive learning environment for everyone. So use your web cameras and audio to engage in small groups. The idea of stepping up and stepping back is that if you are used to sharing your ideas freely, we are very excited to have you do that. But also be aware that some people might be a little shy, and we hope that you'll encourage them to, and that you will, if you're one of those people, share as well, because everyone's ideas are important. Mute yourself when you're not talking to support everyone's ability to hear. And if you have a question, type it in the chat box and include your email address, please. So just a little refresher on Zoom skills. Or if you are using Zoom for the first time, the chat feature is in the middle of the toolbar, either at the top or bottom of your screen. So you can share your thoughts, reactions, or questions there. And also you'll find in the middle of the toolbar that it is labeled chat, and there's a thought bubble that is a little icon for you to recognize. You can also share reactions. So you can raise your hand, send a heart if you really like something, or celebrate something that has been included with confetti. Here's today's agenda. So we've introduced ourselves, and we hope you've had time to add your names and where you're from into the chat box. Please keep doing that if you are joining now. We'll be engaging in several activities and sharing research on the importance of including these areas in your school's curriculum and providing access to every student. Our objectives include identifying research validating the importance of world language, validating the importance of well-rounded programs. I'm just so used to saying world languages. Examine content standards and ways that well-rounded programs strengthen other content areas, and determine strategies to provide access or improve the quality of world-rounded education programs to your students.
Okay, so switching gears a little bit, we're going to be talking about well-rounded, world-ready students today. But before we dive into that, I'd like you to take a look at the image on your screen. This is one of those how it started, how it's going images. So you can see that the back part of the horse looks great. And then by the time they got to the front, things disintegrated a little bit. So thinking about this image, after this last year, do you relate to it? And do you think students could relate to this image? So if you could add your thoughts in the chat about that picture and your experience, that would be great. And we'll do a few call outs as you're adding your thoughts. Give you a nice amount of wait time. Looks about right. Yes. Yes, hopefully by the time you got to the end of the school year, maybe things got a little bit back on track again. And lots of good thoughts in the chat here. Putting the plane together while you were flying it. That was one of the things that I think a lot of us heard throughout that time. Back of the horse is the quality of work from in-person students, and the front is virtual. Yeah, it's been a tough year. I think all of you would agree with that. So as you think about the past year, also think about what needs were neglected. I think some districts had to drop certain things because of safety issues, and then the way schedules had to be remodeled, or if you were virtual a lot of the time, then certain things couldn't happen even within your own curriculum. So share in the chat what needs dropped as you got through the year. And maybe you were able to pick some things up as you got closer to the end of the year and things improved a little bit with COVID. Now, it's very difficult. I'm the fine arts person. I think it's very difficult for fine arts to happen in the traditional ways that we're used to having them happen, because we do so much with community and working together in teams, and all of that just did not work well. Yeah, that group work, that collaboration, anything after school, yes, was severely cut in a lot of cases. Yeah, those labs. So then even further in the chat box, share what is the current reality of well-rounded offerings in your school or district? So, and maybe not just this past year, thinking back in the years previous, but what do you have offered as far as well-rounded classes in your school or district? And when we say well-rounded, we're referring to PE and health, world languages, computer science, the fine arts, at the secondary level, a lot of those elective classes. So go ahead and share what you have, if you know, within your school or your whole district. Yeah, the one positive I think about this past year that Jay Gableman shared with us is that it forced all of us to get really friendly with technology and finally integrate it into our classrooms. I know when I was teaching back a few years ago, Google Classroom was encouraged, but I never got on that train, didn't need it. I was teaching choir, it was fine. I think this would have forced me to finally figure it out. Got a few folks adding their thoughts about well-rounded and what their current reality is. Robotics. Okay, so well-rounded world ready, the definition of this in our eyes is that it's an education that addresses the development of all realms of human behavior, the physical, emotional, social, and intellectual. And when you neglect any of those areas, it weakens all the rest. And I think when we say all the rest, we're specifically also saying the core classes, as some people like to call them, the math, reading, science, and social studies. When we don't have this well-rounded, then we have a weak core. So Oklahoma students should have access to that well-rounded education, which includes physical education, health education, the arts, and world languages.
All right, so now we're going to be participating in a Jamboard activity called Research Reactions. You will be exploring research that impacts about the impact of well-rounded content areas can have on students' intellectual, physical, social, and emotional development and well-being. So to access the Jamboard, you're going to click on the link in the chat that Karen is placing there. And once we get to that Jamboard, you'll notice that each slide, there are 10 slides. At the top, it says 1/10. If you just hit that arrow, it will move you to the next slide. So on each slide of the Jamboard, you'll see research statements. You will share your thoughts and wonderings about those statements with a sticky note or a text box. If you look right over here on the left-hand side, if you hover on over the icons, you will see those descriptions. So this box with the few lines on it is the sticky note. If you go down just a bit, the box with a T is the text box. So you can just click on those and add your comments. So what we'd like you to do is we'd like you to write 3 comments, 1 comment per content area. So we have several slides for fine arts, moving into world languages, and then last but not least, the health and physical education. So we'd like you to post a comment on each of those content areas with the total of 3 comments. We're going to play a little music so that you know when your time is up. When that music goes off, it will be time to wrap up this activity.
See the trouble.
All right, thank you so much for participating in our activity. So we're going to just look over a few of these comments. So I noticed on slide number 2, it says, how does art increase empathy? So Elizabeth, would you like to address that one?
Yeah, and I'm not sure if the comment refers to just visual art or the arts in general. I'm thinking maybe it was just visual art, but I think with all of the arts overall, the way you have to analyze a piece of music or a work of art or a dramatic work or something, it often requires you to put yourself into someone else's shoes and figure out, like, why did they write it this way? Why did they paint it this way? All those sorts, and that analysis, I think, is what leads to the empathy. And then the other piece of it is that oftentimes you're working with other people, even in visual art, like you're critiquing classmates' artwork, you're looking at their artwork. So that empathy piece is taught in those classes because you realize the constructive criticism and how to help people instead of maybe jumping on them and pointing out everything that's wrong with their work of art. That's where the empathy comes into play.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So on slide number 4 for Kathleen in world languages, it says, I wonder how many districts in Oklahoma offer world languages and if they realize their importance.
Well, that's a really great question and insight. We know that approximately 20% of students in Oklahoma take a world language, and that many districts, in particular in the rural areas, don't offer a world language to students. We also, they have the choice oftentimes between technology and world languages to fulfill a graduation requirement. We have a law in place that requires children, all students, to have a world language from the time they're pre-K to graduation in high school. But the teaching pipeline is slim, and so we've had difficulty in continuing to see that through. So we're always finding programs closing, especially programs that are not Spanish, which is really short-sighted because Oklahoma is expanding opportunities with other nations all the time. And we also know that the world is coming to us. So whatever language students want to learn is a valuable and important language and is motivating for them.
Thank you, Kathleen. Moving on over to the health and physical education. On the research stating students with poor nutrition, inactivity, weight problems have a higher prevalence of illness, psychological and social problems that are frequently causes of absenteeism. One statement was, from experience with my own kids, I would have to say this is absolutely true. And as they moved into intermediate and middle school especially, had a big impact on their day. Also, the depression and trauma can affect absenteeism, absolutely. So as we know, that physical education or physical activity can help kind of be a something that can help depression, anxiety, and things that sometimes our students are experiencing. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move back to our main presentation. So if you want to find research, more research to support well-rounded education, you can access these following documents. We'll be sharing this presentation link at the end of our session, and you can check out these resources for that. All right, so I will turn this over to Elizabeth so we can focus on fine arts. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Yeah, so the Oklahoma Standards for Fine Arts are new as of 2020 in the spring last year when things were kind of topsy-turvy. The legislature did manage to approve new fine arts standards for dance, drama, theater, and music and visual art. So if you click on that blue text in the slideshow, it will take you to the new standards website, and you can access all of them for the different areas and grade levels. The dance or drama theater standards are brand new. We haven't had those before in Oklahoma, so that was really exciting that we were able to add those two subjects to our standards. Oklahoma's vision for fine arts is that the arts are designed to support all Oklahoma students to develop and achieve artistic literacy and to promote access and equity in the arts. And when you look at the standards, we hope that those achieve that, and the layout is as follows. There are 4 artistic processes in every discipline area, which includes creating, performing, connecting, and responding. And then underneath that are the standards. And then from each standard, there are objectives that go along with the standards. For every discipline area, there are elementary standards, middle school, and high school, with the exception of music. Music took a slightly different approach. For ensembles such as band or choir, orchestra, there's oftentimes you'll have a 7th grade student playing at a high school level or a high school student playing at a 7th grade level. So they wanted more flexibility in those standards for those ensembles and adjusting standards for the students' needs. So in the music standards, there are elementary standards, and then there are ensemble and or secondary music standards. So a little bit different when you look at those documents. Connections to other subject areas. I started to type a slide out where I was just talking about the connections between the arts and other subjects, and then I realized it would be way too long, so I just made a word cloud instead. So I'll just touch on a few things here. For music, a lot of you are probably aware that there's a very strong connection between music and reading. Of course, when you're reading music, you're tracking across the page. All that's reinforcing students' reading skills. And then there's also quite a bit of math involved with music, with note values and time signatures and all those different sorts of things. For dance, there's a very strong connection, of course, to physical education, but there's also science in there with understanding your body and how things work, motion, understanding the space, etc. For visual art, there are lots of strong links to history, to science with the different materials that students are using. And then drama theater, I've met a few folks in drama theater who like to say that their subject area is the one that incorporates everything, and no one else does it the way they do, which at first I wanted to argue with, but I do think they have a rather strong case. Of course, within drama theater, you have set design and all those sorts of things. So that incorporates visual art, that incorporates science, that incorporates math. And then if you're doing music theater, you have music and dance. You're reading the written word when you're reading a play or a musical, so you have English. And then oftentimes you're looking at the history of what the people were wearing when the play was written, what the playwright was going through, et cetera. So you have lots of history in there too. So maybe they're right. They're the one big, well-rounded subject that we have. I'll leave that up to you to decide. And then beyond the connections with subject areas, we also have connections to 21st century skills. So those include critical thinking, communication, and collaboration. Those 21st century skills are extremely important as students are preparing for their future adult lives. And if you just think about this through the lens of visual art, a lot of the creative process in there is starting with an idea and then revising it through trial and error, developing new ideas, and then applying the feedback of others that you get through communication and collaboration. And then at the end of the process, the student has that finished artwork, but it's unique to the student and meets their personal expectations. No one's telling them, you've got the right answer, or this was the correct conclusion. They come to that on their own while meeting guidelines that were given from the teacher. So as we face new challenges in the future, that out of the box thinking will be more and more valuable to our students, because we don't know what future careers will be happening. I think this past year has taught all of us that there might be unlimited careers happening in the future that we can't even see yet. So those creative ideas that incorporate feedback and go through a revision process will be very valuable to students, and they can take those lessons and apply it to any job field. It's not just students who are majoring in music or students who are going off to do something in visual art. It's students in any job field. They can use these skills in their future careers. And then beyond just those connections, we also have connections to social emotional learning. So you can see the creative processes on the left side of the screen here. After the slash is the visual arts category of the process. They renamed them slightly within visual art, but they're basically the same thing as the other discipline areas. And then we have the SEL skills listed on the right, which include self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. Those SEL skills, I think, are strongly embedded in all fine arts classes. Fine arts educators aren't necessarily great about selling themselves and what the arts can do for students as far as SEL goes, but they are deeply embedded in there and teach students many things beyond just the skills of the art form. So switching gears to a few projects that we have going on at state level that I'd just like to touch on for a moment. We have new curriculum frameworks, and that blue text on the slide will send you to our new website, or you can just Google Oklahoma Fine Arts Curriculum Frameworks and they should come up. We have frameworks for dance, drama, theater, music, and visual art. And this was phase 1. We have phase 2 starting this fall. So we're going to build this site out even more. These are all free resources that follow our state standards. Teachers can use these however they would wish to. These resources are not a have to, they're not a prescribed curriculum. So if you are an arts educator and you have things under control, great. You don't have to use this website. But if you know of someone who's a brand new educator or someone who's struggling a little bit, then this could be a great support to them. I know oftentimes arts educators walk into a classroom and there are no textbooks and no supports. So this is kind of a living virtual free textbook for you to take advantage of. And then also, if you know of someone who's a content area teacher outside of the arts, like for example, a pre-K teacher, and they want to add drama theater into their curriculum, they could do that by just going into the frameworks page and clicking on pre-K and exploring what's there in their classroom. So look for phase 2 this fall. We'll build the site out even further and have more resources for you there. And then the other big project that we have going on that's really exciting is we have a federal grant called Art Tech that was awarded to us from the U.S. Department of Education. And this grant, the goal is to restore and sustain arts education in Oklahoma schools by creating partnerships and investments that leverage the collective experience, wisdom, and resources of our local Oklahoma communities. So we have 3 people hired here at the OSDE who are in charge of this grant. They are recruiting and training teaching artists right now. Eventually we will have 30 that have close proximity to school communities across the state. And those teaching artists will be going in and teaching lessons once a month. And then the other weeks of the month, a classroom teacher will be teaching lessons or students will be progressing through an online curriculum. And so the team is also developing that online curriculum and resources. And at the end of the grant, we will have 8 courses, 4 at the elementary level and 4 at the secondary level that schools can use. They will be free and open. We're hoping to serve about 20,000 students by the end of the project. Right now we have around 18,000 Oklahoma students who have no fine arts classes in their schools. So we're really trying hard to reach those districts. And I'm not sure, I can't remember how many districts they're serving this year, but you can see more information on the blue linked text there on the slide if you want to check that out. So we're really excited about it. It's great to have other fine arts folks working here at the State Department of Education. All right, so before we move on to Shayna's portion of the presentation, I'd like you to just share something that you've learned about fine arts in Oklahoma in the chat box. Hopefully you picked up something new, a little piece of information. So if you could add that in, that would be great. And Shayna, I think we can, oh, and if you have any questions, add those into the chat box too, add your email with it, and I will try to get back with you on those questions if you have some. So I will pass it over to Shayna.
All right. The vision for health and physical education is to provide the knowledge, the skills, and the dispositions to enable students to become healthy and physically literate individuals, as well as being enabled to live active and healthy lifestyles. So for students to become physically literate, it is very important for them to receive high quality physical education in tandem with plenty of opportunities for physical activity throughout the school day. Oftentimes, These terms, physical activity and physical education, are used interchangeably. However, it is important to know the difference and value each. Physical activity is a behavior, and physical education is a class with curriculum that includes physical activity. So both physical education and physical activity contribute to healthy students who develop those lifelong habits. So health and academics are undeniably connected. Like the research from our Jamboard activity stated, physical activity improves cognitive functioning such as attention, concentration, memory, language, abstract reasoning, and calculation. So if you think about those skills I just listed, it pretty much hits all of our core subjects. So healthier students make better learners. John F. Kennedy summed it up nicely when he said, intelligence and skill can only perform at the peak of their capacity when the body is healthy and strong. So one common barrier for high quality health education, and physical activity throughout the school day may be a lack of resources. Online physical education network, we call that OPEN, provides free resources for physical education teachers, but also classroom teachers. There's a section on OPEN that is called Active Classroom. RMC Health is a free resource for health educators, and I'll show you that in just a bit. In physical education and health, teachers have an opportunity to not only teach their standards, but to also reinforce the concepts that students are learning in other subjects. So OPEN has resources that support literacy, STEM, and SEL. If you look at the screen right here, this is an example of one of OPEN's resources that supports literacy. This is called an academic language card. So if students were learning a locomotor skill of skipping, it has the cues here to help teach that skill, as well as the critical elements of the skill. So these are things that students can refer to as they're moving about their classroom. Now, many SEL skills are naturally embedded into physical education and health, just like Elizabeth said about fine arts. However, some of those skills can be explicitly taught. And so Shape America has developed SEL and PE crosswalks, as well as SEL and health crosswalks. So you can see how those subjects really do connect. So I'm just going to show you our OPEN resource here very quickly. If you go to the curriculum resources, you can see that there is a section, Believe in You, solely concentrating on SEL activities. If you scroll up here to physical activities, you'll see that there's active classrooms for classroom teachers, active after school, so that is for after school programs, active at home, as well as recess matters, excuse me. So if we scroll just up a little bit, you'll see the physical education modules, and they have lesson plans and activities for each grade band. If we look at K through 2 real quick, we can scroll down here and we see that it has next gen science connections. We see the personal and social responsibility that kind of connects to that SEL, as well as mindfulness that connects to the SEL. But if we click on right here, locomotor and manipulative skills, and scroll down just a bit, we'll see those academic language cards that I was talking about earlier. Now, RMC is a great resource for health educators. And so if we just go over here to resource and tools and scroll down, they have resources for every grade band for all of the health education standards. So standard 2 is analyze influence. Standard 3, access valid and reliable resources. Standard 4, interpersonal communication. There again, there's that SEL that we talked about being naturally embedded. Decision making, goal setting, self-management. There again, that connection to SEL, and advocacy for self and others. So if we go into that, click on that, we can see that there are resources for every grade band, pre-K through 2, 3 through 5, 6 through 8, and 9 through 12. So a really great resource for our health educators. So here, when you get access to this presentation, if you're curious and want to download those SEL and PE crosswalks, you just go right here to Shape America. That's our national PE and health organization. You can download those crosswalks. All right, so physical education and health also connect to those 21st century skills that Elizabeth was talking about earlier, of creativity, collaboration, communication, as well as critical thinking. So it looks like I went past that first one. So critical thinking is addressed with health education standard number 2 of students will analyze the influence of family, peers, culture, media, technology, and other factors on health behaviors. Communication, well, that's all about standard 4 with interpersonal communication skills to enhance health or avoid or reduce health risk. Creativity is really addressed with the physical education standard number 5, recognizing the value of physical activity for health, enjoyment, challenge, self-expression, and/or social interaction. So an example of that is creative dance. So there's that tie back to fine arts. Collaboration is all about physical education standard number 4 in exhibits responsible personal and social behavior that respects self and others, all about sportsmanship and teamwork, really fit in nicely with that collaboration. All right, so switching gears, now I'd like to tell you about a couple of projects related to health and physical education. The review and revision of the health and physical education started just last week. The writing and draft review committees will be analyzing those standards while considering strategies to make improvement to the existing standards. After the review and revision process is complete and the standards have been approved, well, then we will start working with teachers on the frameworks, and that will begin to support teachers with the implementation of those new standards. Another project that I'm really excited to tell you about is called Painted Play Spaces. The Oklahoma State Department of Education has been partnering with the State Department of Health as well as the University of Central Oklahoma on this project, which is funded by a CDC supplemental COVID grant. The mission of Painted Play Spaces is to enhance the play environments at school by using colorful paint and stencils to create an array of recess games to increase physical activity, student engagement, while social distancing. So UCO has developed some really great resources to help schools implement painted play spaces if they're interested. So if we're going to click on the blue highlighted text right here called Project Switch, that's the name of our project, and Recess Resources. If we scroll down right here, you'll see a section called Painted Play Spaces. So we have a playbook of recess games. There's about 25 games that coordinate with those stencils that we use. There's also a playground assessment and planning toolkit that walks you from the beginning of the process to the end and that very last section of paint the playground. And so we really wanted to make it easy for educators, administrators to implement this great project at your school if you're interested. Now, there's also demonstration videos that we've created that your teachers, your recess monitors can learn from, and then even possibly use this video to teach students the games, because we know that if students are playing by the same rules, they probably will have less student-to-student conflict. All right, so check for understanding. Since I'm a physical education teacher, I had to make it a little bit active. So I'd love for you to participate. So if your school could use these free resources for physical education, I want you to wave your arms in the air like you just don't care, or you can use your confetti reaction if you choose not to move. But, you know, we all need to move a little more. All right, the next question, if you've learned something new about physical education, health education, or physical activity, do the disco roll, or you can use your thumbs up reaction. All right, thank you so much. And I'm going to turn it over to the wonderful Kathleen Skinner.
You'd think that I'd be able to control Zoom by now, but thank you, Shayna, and really enjoyed hearing about fine arts and world language, and our physical health and physical education and PE. So here's Oklahoma's vision for world languages. The Oklahoma Standards for World Languages are designed to prepare students to be academically prepared as for the future in careers and citizen ready by developing and achieving intercultural communicative competence in more than one language and to promote access and equity. All Oklahoma students would benefit by acquiring a high level of linguistic and cultural proficiency in at least one other world language. Proficiency in one or more languages empowers students to use languages other than English to tell their stories, understand the stories of others, and engage with their communities. And to support this, Oklahoma has now has joined the rest, many states in the nation in providing a seal of biliteracy for students to recognize those who have developed high levels of proficiency in English and another language. So if you'll move to the next slide, I'd like to show you that if you'll notice, communication is at the very center of world language goals. And we are revising our standards as well this year. And one of the pieces that we've noticed is how important cultures is as well. And at the national level have developed intercultural communicative competence standards. So communication and cultures fit together very, very much as hand in hand. They're at the center of communication. And we also connect to cultures or to connections, comparisons, and communities. We also have to recognize that the interaction of culture and communities are key and influence the connections of all the other strands. So if you'll move to the next slide, you can see how these strands are broken down in world languages. So we start with communication, and we move to the three modes of communication of interpersonal, interpretive, and presentational, which break down into speaking, listening, writing, and reading. Moving over to cultures, we look at the products, practices, and perspectives. Perspectives is how a community or a culture views things, and as results are their practices and products. Alternatively, you can look at the products and the practices, and through critical thinking, develop what you believe are their perspectives and understand that. What results is intercultural competence. For connections, language is used or can be used to teach and to work with all the subject areas. So it supports literacy, it supports math, science, history, social studies, the arts, physical education, and health. And it provides the ability to make connections to content using another language and provides students with information they may not otherwise have access to. Our comparisons especially tap into critical thinking skills and as well into social and emotional learning. It gives students the opportunity to compare their own culture with the target culture and really get to know themselves as well as the target culture. And then that leads to the understanding of self and others. And finally, our final strand is communities with a connection to target language communities, with the goal being that the students will be able to communicate with target language speakers. So as you can see, world languages connects to every other content area. Not only is a student able to access content discoveries, and research and other information in another language, but they build additional neural pathways that strengthen cognitive abilities, divergent thinking, and memory. So when we look at world languages and communication and cultures, world-ready students fully participate in their local, national, and global communities by proficiently using multiple languages and demonstrating competency in multiple cultures. So as we face new challenges in the future, out of the box thinking will be more and more valuable, as will collaborating with communities around the globe to solve problems. We don't know what the future careers or problems we will be facing around the world, but we do know that effective communication, coming up with creative ideas and solutions by engaging and collaborating with communities that speak other languages, will be very valuable. Students will be able to take the strong communication skills developed in world language classes and apply it to any job field. So some examples of what this looks like include, at the very basic level, that I can communicate on very familiar topics using single words and phrases that I have practiced and memorized. If you move a little higher into the first, what we would consider the beginning of the second year of a language class, I can communicate and exchange information about familiar topics using phrases and simple sentences, sometimes supported by memorized language. If we move into just a slight bit higher level, perhaps the third year of a language, I can usually handle short social interactions in everyday situations by asking and answering simple questions. So if we move to the next slide, you can see that in world languages, the third goal or strand is to connect with other disciplines and acquire information and diverse perspectives in order to use the language to function in academic and career-related situations. So they will connect to and investigate content in other disciplines, have critical thinking about content, and then connecting to others through content. So at the very basic levels, again, a student can say, I can identify and or apply selected information and skills from other content areas in experiences related to the target language and cultures. I can reinforce and or expand learning in other content areas using authentic target language resources. And then by third year of their language experience, I can seek out authentic target language sources, analyze the content, and acquire unique information available only through the target language and its culture. So in this chart, it shows just how important multilingual employees are in all job sectors, not just for travel and not just for diplomacy, but those are very important skills and very important areas of the workforce. World languages skills are applicable in every job across the entire economy. The Oklahoma Department of Commerce has recently brought aerospace companies from France to Oklahoma, and it's seeking increased business ties with Germany and Spain. Taiwan, one of Oklahoma's biggest trading partners, offers job opportunities in high tech and pharmaceuticals. Even construction companies need multilingual speakers. So as we look at the next strand, the comparisons, by exploring one's own culture, exploring and investigating others' cultures, we develop social and emotional learning skills. We apply critical thinking to compare the similarities and differences between them, and we cross borders that create transformational learning. We develop empathy and new ways of approaching problems that create great solutions. At the novice level, a student might say, I can recognize cross-cultural similarities and differences in the practices and products of the target culture, or I can recognize cross-cultural similarities and differences in the perspectives within the target culture. In this goal, students gain broader perspectives on how others think and do things. At the intermediate level, which is again about third year at the high school level, I can use knowledge of sound and writing systems in the target language to better understand my own. As you can see in this goal, world languages supports and improves literacy skills. But if we start with students in the elementary grades, it supports them even further. So if we move to the next strand, we can see in language or communities. The role of languages in connecting people to others is at the heart of communication and human experience. Language is our primary tool for relationships, civic engagement, and global impact. Effective world language programs invite students to form a community with their classmates, introduce them to target language communities, and support them in building relationships. Relationships may be virtual or be developed through face-to-face interaction. Regardless, they will provide opportunities for development of language proficiency and empathy, and opportunities for collaboration. At the basic level, one goal in this is expressed as, I can communicate on a personal level with speakers of the target language, which if you ask students at any level, why are you learning a world language? What do you want to do with it? They're going to tell you, I want to be able to speak to people from other parts of the world. I want to be able to speak to someone who is from Germany. I want to be able to speak to someone from Russia or China. It's not until later that they begin to think about the career goals and ways that supports them as well. With more development at the intermediate level, it includes, I can exchange information with native speakers about topics of personal interest. So moving forward, very young children make a variety of mistakes when they acquire their first language. Responsible caretakers accept their child's communications, imperfect as they may be, and applaud those efforts. Since the child knows they're in a safe environment, they continue to cultivate their language. So the Ideal Language Program begins in early childhood. At each level, the teacher acts as a language parent, creating a supportive environment that imitates the culture and provides comprehensible input that gives the brain what it needs to scaffold new language development. The actual content of language learning then frequently focuses on building relationships, which is the primary purpose of communicating, and develops social and emotional learning, drawing attention to who one is and who others are. As language develops, students become more aware of their first and second languages and cultures. Initially, they may consider the differences strange, but with more exposure, they begin to understand the perspectives of the culture, and they develop understanding and empathy. So if you'll, in the chat box, place how you think world languages opens doors of opportunities for your students. I'd like to see what you've gained today.
All right, thank you, Kathleen. We're going to move into an activity right now. So just think about where is your school at in providing access to well-rounded education? And then what can you do to improve the quality of well-rounded education in your district? So what we're going to be doing right now, we'll be putting you into breakout rooms, and you'll be working in small groups to complete the activity called Color Question Brainstorming. Now, remember, when you get into these groups, we would like you to identify a recorder that will type the questions in the answers or the questions of the group, and assign that into the appropriate category. So we're going to go ahead and click on this activity so that you can kind of see the setup. So each breakout room will be assigned to a slide. So right here, this is breakout room number 1. Here's breakout room number 2, and so on. Okay. So if you look, you'll notice that the table is divided into 3 colors: the red, the blue, and the green. The red section, we kind of had you start brainstorming a bit earlier in the presentation. It says, what is the current reality of well-rounded offerings in your school or district? Okay, and you'll just share with your group and kind of brainstorm or share those activities and place them right here in this red column. Now on the blue section, you will share your judgments, opinions, values, and your needs. And we have a prompt here that says, what are your needs? What are the needs that you see in your district? Then you'll move over to the green section, and this is the imagination. Oh, just wait 1 second, please. We'll put you in those breakout rooms before you begin the activity, okay? All right, so in the green section, you're going to use your imagination, your ingenuity, and possibility. And the statement prompt there, it says, what would well-rounded education look like in your district without limits? Okay, so that's kind of the setup of the activity. We're going to go back right here, and then we will get you into breakout rooms. Accept that invitation to go to the breakout rooms. Make sure you pay attention to your breakout room number, because that is the slide you will complete in the activity. All right, so let's see. Elizabeth, how many participants? We have 45 participants. All right. You will have groups of 4 and 5 people. And so make sure you're stepping up and stepping back. I'm going to open all rooms, and you may begin once you're in your areas. Debway, do you need help getting to a room?
I just kind of wanted to hang out with you, Shayna.
Okay, well, that works. Thank you.
If you'd like for me to join a room, I was asked to go to 10. So if you need me to go to one, I can.
Karen, would you mind putting the link for the activity in the chat box?
Is this just the brainstorming document again?
Yes, please.
Yes, thank you. Actually, I will hop into all the breakout rooms and place it there just to ensure that they have it.
Thank you, friend. Karen, did you get to all of the breakout rooms? Oh, you're so good. Thank you. All right. It looks like everyone has returned back from our breakout rooms. So Elizabeth, would you like to share some of the ideas that our groups brainstormed?
Yes. So it looked like we had varying levels of participation across the groups, but some of you had a lot of ideas and questions, wonderings happening. One of the trends that I saw across a lot of the groups was the time in the day. Not only that classes are scheduled opposite each other, like for example, a course is offered opposite an athletics hour. So then students are having to choose between sports and taking a class, or just time in the school day in general. I know at the elementary level, there's often a crunch as to what can be offered at what times due to scheduling with classroom teachers and, lunchroom space and recess area and how it all works, getting kids through those areas throughout the day. That really affects what you can offer for well-rounded overall. And then there were some really interesting things just about what is offered and what is not offered. A few people wondered about funding and the unequal funding across the state for districts of different sizes and different locations. And that's something that we've definitely talked about here at the SDE. That's a concern, and we don't know how to fix it. I think that's a legislative fix, unfortunately. So we're kind of powerless to change it, but it is a problem that we have some districts that have lots of things happening, and then we have others who are just so limited because of what their tax base has and how they're funded overall. So that's a concern. And then of course, across a lot of the groups, I saw that we just need teachers, which we all know there's a teacher shortage happening in all subject areas. We need more folks to be willing to come into the classroom and work with our students. So I'm going to address a few of those concerns here in this next portion of our presentation. One way that you could fund a few things possibly is through federal funding. And federal funding is the title funding. And I'm sure if you're a teacher, you've heard these things mentioned, but it's a little bit out there and you're not really sure what it's all about. So there are different titles with federal funding, and the first one that you probably heard of is Title I. That funding can actually be used in certain situations for all students in a building and could be used for a well-rounded education. So it's definitely worth it to look into your Title I funding and see how that's being spent, and maybe if you couldn't expand the use of it across the school district. And you can click on the links in the presentation or in the chat there to see more about Title I and how that works. Title II is specifically funding for teachers. So this is for professional development of teachers, administrators, other school leaders. So if you're an educator and you've always wanted to go to a conference that happens every spring, and when you go to your administrator in January, they often tell you that there's no funding, Title II might be an answer for you. Some districts do spend all of their Title II funding on in-district PD, but some districts leave a lot of Title II funding on the table every year, and they just don't think about the fact that it could be used to send teachers to PD outside the district. So start asking those questions of your administrators, and you might not move the ball this year, but in the future, they'll be aware that you want to attend professional development, and they might make the connection that that Title II funding could be used for that. Title IV Part A is specifically used for a well-rounded education. And I'm going to go more into that here in a moment, but there's a link there for you to click on if you're interested in that. And then Title V Part B is for our rural schools. So if you're in a rural district, which is the majority of our districts in Oklahoma, you receive funding through Title V, and that funding could also be used to support a well-rounded education. So there's another pipeline there for these courses. So going into specifically Title IV Part A, these funds are designed to give students access to a well-rounded education, and it improves student condition, school conditions for student learning, safe and healthy students. And then there's also a technology portion of this that you can use. And I know on some of the slides, a lot of you said that you wanted to offer more classes, but there's not the funding for those tech classes to be supported. So this could be used for that. Next slide, please. So how this funding comes to your district is it's based on your Title I funding formula. So if you are a school that has a lot of students who are disadvantaged, then your Title IV Part A funding is higher than other districts who have more affluent students. So that's based on that Title I funding formula. Every district, no matter what, receives at least $15,000. This funding, though, can supplement what you're doing. It can't supplant. So if over this past year you had an accompanist for your middle school and high school choirs, and you want to pay that accompanist salary through Title IV Part A next year, you can't do that because you paid it in a different way last year. So it can only supplement. So if you never had an accompanist up until this year, you could start paying them through Title IV Part A during this next school year. If your district does have a large population of disadvantaged students, then you might receive a large amount of funding. And if it's over $30,000, then you have to do a needs assessment and spend the money according to a certain way. So that's a little into the weeds, but you can't just spend $30,000 on new stage curtains and lighting for your performance space. It has to be spent in a certain way if it's over that amount. The drawback to this funding is that it can be transferred to other titles. So a lot of districts just take their Title IV Part A and put it into Title I and then spend it for whatever they need, a reading coach, etc. So that's the disappointing part about this. But if you start asking, if you're a teacher and you ask your administrators some questions about Title IV Part A, then maybe they will start to rethink how they're spending this money and where it can go. This next year, the fiscal year of 2022, the federal budget includes a request for $1.22 billion in Title IV Part A funding, and the Title IV Part A Coalition is hoping that that's actually going to be a $2 billion allocation. So that's a lot of money, and we might end up with more than just the $15,000 base. So we'll see what happens with the federal government, but there is still funding coming through this title. And if you'd like more information, the Title IV Part A Coalition has a great website, and it is in the chat there. It's that title4a.org link that Karen just put in there. So click on that to find more information. If you have questions about title funding and how it works, how those federal funds get to your district and where it goes, you can reach out to any of us and we can put you in contact with our federal funding people here at the SDE if you have further questions. But I think it's really helpful if you're an educator for you to kind of understand how this all works. So you can ask the right questions and maybe help direct things to where they need to go a little bit better within your districts. The other way that you could possibly fund a well-rounded education to make this happen in your district is through adjuncts. And you might not know it, but adjuncts are used at the pre-K through 12 level in Oklahoma. We have them at the collegiate level all the time, but yes, there are adjuncts in K-12 as well. So Oklahoma school districts hire these folks. The School Board of Education decides who they're going to hire, and they're the ones who make that judgment. They just need to be a person who's qualified according to what the school board deems qualified. They do not have to have standard certification, but they're limited into how many hours they can teach a day. So it's 270 total, depending on how many days you have in the school year. That's 2 to 3 hours a school day. So how this might look is that you might have a nurse who's really great with kids, really personable, et cetera, knowledgeable, and you want to offer a high school health class. Then that nurse could be approved to be an adjunct and come in and teach that high school health class 1 hour a day. You might have a dance studio teacher on your main street downtown who teaches in the afternoons and evenings, but who would be interested in teaching an elective course for your middle schoolers and come in and do that 1 hour a day. So they could do that as an adjunct as well. This may be a great solution if your district's struggling to find those folks who are qualified to fill these positions, or just create full-time positions for some of these jobs, because I know smaller districts, you won't hire a full-time dance educator, but you might hire them for 1 or 2 hours a day. So back when we were talking about the color code question brainstorming, a lot of you said that there's a personnel issue and there's no teacher pipeline. So this could be a really great way to fulfill that need. And there are districts in Oklahoma right now who have adjuncts hired. So you wouldn't be an anomaly if you went this route. And hopefully it would be a stepping stone to having a full-time person in the future.
All right, thank you so much, Elizabeth. Really great information for folks. All right, so we would like to thank you for joining us today to learn about well-rounded education and how to support all students to be world ready. Before we wrap up, we'd like you to reflect on your experience with an activity called Thumb Ball. If we were in person, I would have a ball with different symbols on it. And when the ball was tossed to you, whatever symbol your thumb is touching indicates what you share with the group. But since we're not in person, I will let you choose what you share with the group in the chat box. So you can use an asterisk, a plus, exclamation point, or a question mark, and then write maybe the next step or your connection that you made or something you want to remember. If you do add a question mark and then add your question, go ahead and add your email address so that we can get in contact with you moving forward. All right, so go ahead and do that reflection quickly in the chat box, and then we will move on. Kathleen. Kathleen, would you like to share about Oklahoma Excel?
Sure. So Oklahoma Excel is a program we've had in place for some time, directed by Dawn Irons. It is includes a network improved community, or a NIC. It provides job embedded, collaborative, year-long professional learning for teachers. The deadline has been extended to apply if you are interested in becoming a part of this program. It's a really amazing way to support your district and bring about positive changes. Deadline is July 2nd now, and you can apply for it by going to this bit.ly link. It focuses on the areas of ELA, math, science, and now early childhood education. And there is professional development awards that are still available. If you want more information, you can also go to the SDEOK Oklahoma Excel website and learn all about it. In addition, we would like to share our updates regarding the Oklahoma Ready Together, the action plan to support students through the pandemic and beyond. This plan is a two-pronged approach: the summer programs, guidance, supporting documents in 5 areas that include student learning and success, prioritizing health and wellness, ensuring equity for all, supporting teachers and leaders, and engaging families and communities. You can learn all about the new plan by going to our OSDE website. And then please feel free to contact any of us about your questions, comments, or concerns. We're here to help. And we're so thankful that you came and joined us today. Now you can retrieve your PD certificate by clicking on the link that's in the chat box. The session is recorded, and you can review it again or share it with others in your district or community to get more information, or to try to remember some of the information we presented and provided. Since all sessions will be have been recorded, you as attendees who come later can watch the program and request a PD certificate by emailing the events at sde.ok.gov. And at the bottom is the link to our presentation. So thank you again for taking time to participate in this session. We hope it's energized you for the coming year, has given you some new ideas, research, and resources for yourself and those to share.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Have a great summer.